Okay, welcome back. More APIs. So today the class is also called APIs, but it's because we are going to learn how to make our own APIs. Until now, or Monday, we did not use it that much, but at least on Monday, we learn what it is an API and how to use these external APIs by calling the fetch. But now we're going to go to the opposite side, like if I am a server and I want to offer the opportunity for others to use an API, how do I do that? So how do I create like my own way of offering data to the world? So this is our first official like backend class, because we will see how to run, how to create a web server and use this web server to offer some resources for front-end applications. And then later, next week, we will see how to connect both. So if I have a front-end application and I also create the server, how the front-end can ask and get the data from my own server, so that I create both components. So APIs again, we will not see what is an API because we have already seen this, and very briefly, what is a REST API? What are query parameters and URL parameters? What are the two different ways of passing information in a URL of an API? And then we'll get to NodeExpress, which is our tools for creating the server, the web server. And what are the routes and middleware that we can also add to this server? And how do we write these routes in Express? I'm going again to go through the slides, hopefully a bit quickly, because sometimes I take a lot of time on the slides and we need to get to some examples. So API, we have seen on Monday, it's an application programming interface, and it's a way between a client and a server to communicate, an agreement on how they communicate. And it's a way that you define how to use your data, who has access to it, and what kind of methods you can use, either to write, to delete, or to update some data. It's similar as we had, remember the stack class that we created, or the stack or the queue or the link tree class that we created back then when we were working with data structures. Then on these classes, we had some methods. So we had the push method or the pop or the pick, or we created some methods. These methods are kind of like the API endpoints. So these were the ways for external people that wanted to use our class to interact with our class, with our data. So they could do this action or the other or the other. So the same happens with our API. We define how external programs can use our data. And so a specific category, let's say, of APIs, it's what we call REST APIs. The quickest way to define this is that it's APIs that are restricted by some limitations. And one of these limitations is that they must use the HTTP protocol. So they must use this GET, POST, etc. methods that we have seen, because they could use another protocol. It's not obligatory for an API to be connected with HTTP protocol. But if you search about it, this is a very common question. I don't know if it's a common question on interviews, frankly, but it is really like a question of this, a bit tricky. And you can search and you can find a lot of information on what is a REST API, because the truth is that it's not very straightforward what it is. It is an API that basically that conforms to some constraints of the REST architectural style. And so here you will find what are these constraints. So there are different constraints that many of them probably are more confusing. That makes sense. So you don't really have to remember all these constraints. The most common one to remember is that this API, that if it has to be considered REST API, it needs to be using this client-server architecture with the HTTP protocol, and then some other constraints. So REST APIs, it's not that it's a different category. Let's say it's just that they need to be considering some limitations so that they are considered REST APIs, RESTful APIs. So we don't really need to get into this data of what is a REST API. Here, when we want to design our own APIs, so we have some APIs in mind because we have seen the weather API and maybe the jokes API, or I don't know if you had some time to work to play with some of the others. If we want to design our own, we need to think what are the resources that we will be serving. So is it an API for giving information about cats, or about people, or about books? So the resource keyword is the key here. It's what is the data that we will be serving. And then we use plural nouns to describe these resources. So let's say that our APIs will be about users. So we will use users, or cats, or books, or posts, or movies. Normally, the convention is that we use a plural name for defining these resources. Since the API you can design as you like, you could actually write whatever. So let's say that you have an API for users. You could use a plural, or you could use user, or you could use even some other keyword, because these keywords, you define them, you set them on the backend server. And so you could also have something here that's it's a word string saying, give me all users. And this would be your API. If I do / give me all users, then you get the users back. But the convention is that we don't use any verbs in here on the end paths of the API, because the verb actually comes from the method that we are going to use. So since we know we have these 4 methods, we can either get, post, put, or delete. So these methods will define the action. I don't have to really also include the action in the URL. And the URL will also only define the resource. So the resource type, if it is a users, if it is posts, if it is books, and some other parameters that are necessary. So for example, get me users with ID 23. So it will return the user. It will be 1, but still I use the plural here to make it more uniform. So this will return me the user with ID 23. Or get me the posts from the user with ID 23. So then maybe I create some kind of API with an endpoint like this. These are called endpoints because we assume that on the other side of it, we have this base URL that is common to all of them. Same as we had with the Open Weather Map, there was this base URL, www.api.openweather.org/, and then there were different things for asking different resources. So if it was /weather and some parameters, we were getting the current weather information. If it was /forecasts, then we were getting the forecast information. So same thing happens here. We define the endpoints. So if it is /users, I'm going to get the user information, /posts, and I can have different endpoints for different resources that I want to offer. And there is also a difference between what will be in the URL. So this part here, the ID, etc., it's inside the URL. And there is one part that's coming after the question mark, that this is considered query parameters. So one part is URL parameters and one is considered query parameter. And one would ask why the ID, how do I decide if the ID is a query parameter or if it is a URL parameter? Because I could also do users question mark ID equals 23, and then I would get the user with ID 23. But normally when something is really important and will it's very connected with the resource itself, like the ID, for example, that it's an identifier of the resource itself that I'm getting. We include it as a URL parameter, and then we leave the query parameter for optional stuff or added information. So for example, if we do some kind of pagination, maybe we can specify the page 1, page 2, page 3 of all the resources, or if we have some authentication key like this API ID that we got on the Open Weather Map, then we also add it as a query parameter, or something else that it's like added information. This is like a question, $1 million question, what to put here and what to put there. And so you will practice this and you will see different formats, because also at the end developers create these APIs and each one creates those on her own way. But the basic to remember is that we have these two types of parameters because we have different access to these two. One that it's parameter of the URL itself, and one that it's a query parameter that comes after the question mark. Here are some example routes. I can create, let's say I want to create some program, some app to give root user information. So I can have /users, and when someone access www.myprogram.com/users, then this will return all users because I have not specified any ID. So that means that give me all users. Users/some ID means translates to return me the user with ID 5 if the method is get. The same, but with the method put. So again, the URL will be the same. If I had to write the URL, would be exactly the same, www.myprogram.com/users5. But depends if the method is a put, or if it is a get, or if it is a delete. A different handler will be called, a different action will happen. So if the method is get, this will be interpreted as return me the user with ID 5. If the method is put, this will mean update or replace the information of the user with ID 5. And then also I'm expecting some data to be sent to the body so that I know with what information to replace it. And if the method is delete, then that means delete this user with ID 5. Okay, and also we have post so that we can add a new user, and so different ones. So this one, for example, get all posts written by user with ID 5. So this is what you will have to decide and design when you create your own apps. So it depends what type of app you create. You will have to decide these routes, how they will be, because each route will be connected to a different functionality, to a different handler. And the responses also, we have seen it, if it is successful, if it is a new resource successfully created, this 201, if we have a post request, 400, 404, 500, the common ones. So these are called routes, these endpoints, as I was saying, this API route. This route on the server is matched with some handler, so with some function. On the server, we will have, like if it is an if case, let's say, we will not use the if word, but it will be like, if you match this route, then do that function. If you match this other route, then you do that other function. So that we know that what will happen after each route if I'm to reply with providing information, with updating, with deleting, etc. And there is also another part that's called middleware. This was actually included with Express. Express, it's one of the libraries of Node that we will be using for creating a server. And Express includes middleware, which is what happens, other code that it's in the middle of two other things, which are the two other things. It's the request and the response. So between the time that a client sends a request and the server sends back the response, this will end the communication. Let's say this part of the communication starts with a request and ends with the response from the server. Whatever this response is, successful, not successful, whatever. So these are the two end points of the communication, the start and the finish. And in the middle, other things can happen from a handler, but also from other functions. So other functions can also be placed in the middle, some steps to be called before the communication cycle finishes. So this is called this middleware chain. Depends on the order, how you will write them. So if they will run in order as they were written and registered in the server. And this middleware, we can use them for doing some checks. The most common thing to use, for example, is for checking if a user is authenticated. So this is something that I have to do in every cycle of communication. And instead of repeating this code all the time, I just include in there in the middle some check user ID, let's say, some function that will be checking the user ID before handling anything else. So this function will be middleware type because it will be called every time when a request comes. The first thing to do is check if the user exists or check if the ID has access to this data or some authentication stuff, and then proceed to creating the response from the server with the data that requested, etc. So we will also try to see some middleware. Node, we have used it. It's an environment to run JavaScript outside of a browser, and it's actually based on the V8 engine from Chrome. And we have already used it either with the NPM to install packages and run tests. Also, if you try to use run some code outside of a browser, you may have used Node and the code and the file name. So it's a way of running JavaScript outside of a browser. Node on its own, it's not a web server. It's just a way to run JavaScript. And we can run JavaScript for many things, not only for creating a web server. But it has already some functionalities also for creating a web server. And if on top of Node we put Express, which is another framework specified for building server for web and mobile apps, then we get a very fast and quick way to create our own web server. Express is also written in JavaScript and it works on top of Node. And so when we want to create a program in Express, we will be creating some kind of routes. And for this, we will specify different things. So we will see this in action. This is like if it is a function. And we have three parts. One that specifies what type of request this is. If it is a get, a post, a put, or a delete request. So here we have to specify the type of the request. Then we have this string here that specifies the route. It's what I was saying, that this will be matched so that I know if I'm going to call this function or some other function. Because we will have for each endpoint, for each route, we will have these parts of block repeated with different actions. And then we have a callback function. So this is a callback function that receives two parameters, the request and the response. The request is what they receive from the client, and the response is what we will send back to the client. So here we are on the server now, right? So this is what the server sees. And the server gets the request from the client, processes the request, so it can process the query parameters, it can process the URL parameters, see what exactly you are asking, and then prepare some response to send back to the user. This is an error. In fact, here it should be res and not response, because this corresponds to this. So this should be corrected. This should be res. It's the response that I'm sending back. So in this small example, it's a route that needs to get users. So I'm just getting my users from the database or whatever. I have some function that gets me my users, and then I send the users back as a response. So response.send users. So we have these two arguments in the handler, the request object, what was received from the client, and the response object, that is the one that will be returned to the user, including some information, either a status code or some data or some other message. If I want to get one user, let's say, from the routes that we had seen before, again, we have the method that is get. We specify the method here. We specify the URL to which this will match. So it will be /users/some ID. So this colon and ID means that this will be replaced by an ID. It doesn't mean that I will be expecting the user to write ID equals something. So if it is like this, with this format, means that it will match anything here that will be an ID. It doesn't identify if it is numeric or if it is string or whatever. This we don't identify here. So I need to get from the request URL, so from the request parameters. This is an object that stores all the parameters. I will be getting the ID, and then I can retrieve a user with this ID and return this concrete user. So this we will see in action. For each name following a colon in the URL, there will be a corresponding property with that name in request parameters. So this request parameters is a big object that for everything that comes after a colon, it will be creating a property there, and we can access this. So let me skip some of them because I want to see them more in action. So let's say, for example, if we have a post method, so post users, so I change here, I write post, and then post users means that I'm trying to create a new user because I'm posting some information, some data. And so then that means that from the request body, in this case, a request will come to me as a server. There will be some header, and there will be a body where will be all the information from the user, the name, the email, the password, the age, the telephone, whatever I have collected from a form in any way. And all this will be stored in the body part. So I'm going to get the body, do something with this, add it to my database or push it to an array, whatever I want to do, and then send back some message like user was created, the status code 201, when a new resource is created, and maybe some other message here. So when we deal with post or with a put, we need to also be able to process extra information that will be coming in the body, because that means that we try to alter some resource or create a new resource or alter it. And delete a user, again, we use the different method here. Maybe we specify which user with this ID, and then we check maybe if the user is exists, or if not, maybe we have sent a message error not found. So here we have different functionality. This is a normal function, so we can do different things, query a database, use some filter or some find to see if on our array there is a user with this array ID, whatever we can think of and we need to do to fulfill this request. Let's see it a bit in action, and anytime just also stop me or ask questions. So in order to create our first server, what we will do is, let me open this here. So I'm going to create, first I'm going to create a directory, first app, and I'm going to get into that directory. And the first thing to do will be to run npm init. npm init, and then it asks me a lot of information, like the default information. And I will just write yes to everything. Okay, and let's see what this created. This npm init creates like an initial package.json to have as a starting point. And this package.json, if I check it, it doesn't have many things right now, just all these things that they were the default that I have added. So what is the name, the version, description, but there are no packages installed because I did not install anything. I just like initiated a folder with the package.json so that if I want to install different packages, they will be written there. Remember that package.json keeps track of all the different packages I install. And so the first package that I need to install in order to have my server is the Express. So I will need to npm install Express. And okay, this is installed, and not only this, but there are 57 packages installed because Express comes with a lot of things. So now if I check my folder, I have also this node modules folder created with a lot of packages in there related to creating a web server. And we can also check the package.json file as before. Now I have this dependency created. That means that indicates that I have also installed this Express package. It just shows the Express because it's the one that I have installed. It doesn't show all these others that they're installing together with Express. So now I'm ready to create like my first server. So I'm going to create a file. This with the touch, you just create an empty file, this server.js that doesn't have anything. And in fact, I'm going to open it in a new window. So this is my basic server structure. Now I have here nothing, we will add something here, but I'm just installing Express. Basically, I have this package.json, I'm installing Express, and I'm ready to write some code. And so the first thing that I need to include is actually call Express. In Node, there is a bit of difference of how we import things. So in the front end, remember that in the front end, we were using const, let's say, React from React or something like this, or when we were getting, no, it was import, right? Not it was something like this, import React from React, or import form from components form. So this was the way for importing things in React or in the front end. In the backend, we have this other way of importing things. We say with which name we import them, same as here, but then we say equal require, and then we say the root where this file is located. So it's a bit of a different way of importing things on the node and on the backend. So the first thing I'm importing is this Express program that I have installed that will help me create the server. And then I'm going to run Express. So I'm running it. So this creates kind of a method that if I run it, I can assign it again to an app, and this app will be my server. Let's say this will be the equivalent to my server. The most simple the simplest Express program is this, and then I just write a very basic route. So if someone tries to get to nothing, so just the normal URL, no added things, so just the www.localhost.com with nothing, no extra parameters. Then what I will respond, so I will get a request, and here is my callback function. So if someone gives me with a get method and tries to get to this route, I will just respond with some hello world. I just have this route defined, and then what I need to do to initiate the server is to define where the server will be listening. So that the server will be listening to the port 3000, for example. And so I define here which port 3000, and I'm going to write something. Server listening to port 3000, so that I have some indication of how this, of where the server will be. So remember when we opened the React or the Vue app that we were having this line saying open localhost 3000 or open localhost 567. So we define which port, normally will be localhost and this port, and then we can write some kind of message like server listening to localhost 3000. Or localhost 3000. Okay, so that's the basic configuration of my server. And so if I want to run it, I have to write node and the file name. So now my server has started. It's listening to this URL. And if I open this, I just get this hello there, because this is the base URL with a slash. This is the one I'm expecting here. So if someone tries to access this, I get hello there. I don't have anything else to offer for now. So even if I do /user, it says cannot get user because it doesn't find any match to something /user. The only match that it finds is with the base URL. So if I just put the base URL, I will have this. If I change this to hello or whatever I want to put in here, then if I write here hello, then I should be able to get this. So what happened now, that's a good opportunity, is that I made some change, but whenever I do some change, I need to restart the server so that the change reflects. It doesn't do it automatically, not as it was doing it in React, that it's automatically. Okay, so now I still can, I get a message that I cannot get hello, even though I changed this, because I did not restart my server. So I need to stop it and restart it. And now if I try to get hello, I will get the hello there. A good way to not have to do this every time is to install another package that is called NodeMon. So in fact, you can install it globally with a -G. So the I is for install. I'm going to write it full way. -G to install it globally so that you don't have to install it every time. That means that it's installing globally in your machine and you will always have it and you can use it. And the program is called NodeMon. And so that means that when I'm using NodeMon, I can run this same program, this server, instead of writing node server.js, I can write nodemon server.js, and that will create a server, a starting server, but that whenever I'm changing something, automatically it's reloading my server and I don't have to stop and reload it all the time. So this is a useful tool. So now if instead of hello here, I want to say anything else, users, if I save, you see that here it says restarting due to changes, and it's restarting my server, and then automatically here I can get the new thing that I have done. So questions?
When choosing the local host, is 3000 kind of the default, or what are the options there, or kind of what do
you can use whatever. There are many. You can use a lot. There are some that are reserved. I don't know now if there is some list anywhere. So there is one that is reserved, for example, for MySQL. The MySQL server, it's using normally one port. That it's good that you don't use that. You can, yes, normally you use 3000, 4000, 5000, and sub versions of those, like 3001, 3002, or 5005, or whatever you want. But you can use these ones, are normally free, and you can use these ones. Yes, I'll check if there is some reserved. Depends also on what programs you run on your laptop. So normally we will be running MySQL, and we need to make sure that we don't use the port of MySQL, but we don't have many running. More doubts or? Let's try to create something that will give us back some information. And so to create some kind of routes, let's say I have some data that I want to give back, so that if I don't have any data, I cannot really create an API if I don't have anything to give back. So I'm going to create like a fake database that next week we will replace with a real database. Let's say I have some cats data, and you see this is an array. I can add more, I can have more, but this will be later obtained automatically from my database. So I have this cat data, and I want to be able to send it to the user, to someone that asks for this. So the APIs that I can create is one generic hello there, as it didn't ask me for anything, so I'm just leaving this like this. It will be like my base URL that will be just giving some hello message or index, or showing that I'm active, I'm alive, and I'm here. But let's say I want to respond with all cats. So I'm going to create a route that is called cats, and it's a get method. So that means that I want to get all the cat information. So the response can be, I'm going to update my response, and I'm going to make it to send, and I'm going to send back an object that can be cats, and we'll have the cat data. So I'm going to set it in an object format, cats, and have the cat data, because imagine this is like the APIs that we were dealing with. So this will be like a JSON format, and I'm just enclosing all my cat data to something called cats, which is the name of the resource here. This is something that I can define. It's not that someone says that this has to be the same name as this. No, this you can put whatever you want. So you can put cat data and then copy the cat data that you have. The idea here is that when you write /cats, you get this data. So if I come here and I write cats, I'm getting this JSON format of all the cat data that I have in my fake database, cats and an array of my cat data. I can see it here in my browser, but be careful because on the browser, you can only see the get requests. A browser is only good for getting stuff. You cannot put stuff from the browser. If we want to put stuff, as we will do later, so post something like to add a cat data to this database, we will need to use the Postman because Postman allows us more flexibility. So if I go here on the Postman, this same route I can copy. It's a get cats, my local host 3000, and I get the same information. Okay, but later, if I add some more routes and I want to do a post, I need to do it from the Postman here or a delete or whatever. This is only good for getting stuff. So in this case, I didn't have to check for anything from the URL, like an ID or something. But if I want to get a concrete cat, let's say a cat with ID 1, then maybe I will need to create a route where a user will be passing an ID. And then first thing to do is to check this ID from the request parameters. So remember, whatever I have after a colon, stored in parameters object, params. So rec.params is this object that stores everything that comes on the URL. So the .id will give me the value of what the user has entered here. And I can use this ID to get from this array the cat with this ID. So let me write it like this. I'm going to use a find higher order function. So this for now. We can use, yes, with find or with a filter, whichever method you prefer. And so I'm going to look through my cats data array, and for each item, I'm going to check if the ID is equal to this ID that I got from the user. So this ID is stored in the request params.id. And so in this case, instead of sending all the cats data, I'm going to send only the one that corresponds to the one that the user has asked for, the one with this ID. Okay, so, and let's check if this works. If I put cat/1, I don't get anything here. Cats1. Cats data find. Let me just console log just in case. In this case, when you console log stuff, what you will see is here. Your console now it's here. The server runs here. You will not see it on the browser. A browser is your client, but this console log will be happening on the server. So you will see it here. So let's say that I'm asking for cats1 and I get undefined. So there was nothing found here. Maybe I have some error. Item ID, okay, equals to request parameters. Okay, what is happening is that, as I was saying, we don't differentiate if this is a number or a string. And so this equality will not work because this is a number and this is basically a string. Whatever I get from the URL, it's a string and I need to transform it to a number. So I need to make sure that for checking this, the parameter that I got from the URL, which is actually string, even if I put a number 1, I change it to number if I need to compare it with the number. So now it should work, and I get this cat with this ID. And if I put the 2, then I get the one with the other ID. But if I put 3, then I don't get anything, but I don't even get an error message. So another thing that I could do is to also add some error message. If I found something, then I send back the cat that I have found, else request status, and I can use also this status to just send some code and then send some error message. I like to put it like this in a JSON format. So like if it is an object error and then the message not found, so that it's more uniform, so that you know that you always expect an object and not that at some moment you will get an array and then some other moment you will get a string, and then so it's always an object with this JSON format, and maybe there is an error, maybe there is some other property to this. So if I check it like this, now if I try the 3, I get error not found because there was nothing with this ID.
Can I ask a question about the,
Yes.
so you put the curly braces, that turns it into the JSON format, or is that somehow embedded in like the send or the like
no,
the
it's
send
this
method or
curly
express?
braces. So if I just,
Okay.
let's say I just found,
Mhm.
I said 2. No, I mean, yes, this is also an object because the found was actually an object.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if here, let me change this one to some string. And so this doesn't come back as JSON now, it's just the string.
Okay, so using the curly braces makes it
Yes,
the
so
JSON
you
format.
make it more JSON format.
Okay.
And here I can just send the object as it is, or I can just also include it like cats or what other identifier I want to put in front.
And do you always have your data as an array inside the server.js, even if it's like a lot or not?
You can have it in a separate file. So my cat data and load it. Now we're using this just for testing, but normally you will be getting them from a database, so it's not going to be on file. So this, in order to be able to use it from the server, so in order to be able to import it here, and this will be, let me write it, cats data equals require to import it from my cat data. Wait, I need to put this dot slash here. But in order for you to be able to see this, same as we were doing with React, that we had this export default, here as well, you need to export this. So you write module exports and equal to this array, and so that you export this array so that you can import it on wherever you need it, and you use it with the name that you imported there. So here I am importing it and using it with this name. So you can save it in a different file if you want, so that you have this cleaner. And this should still work. Cats data find, let me check. Cats data. I'm exporting it as an array. Let me just console log it somewhere. So I'm going to console log it here. Let's see what this is. No, now it's working. Okay, maybe it didn't restart correctly. Yes. Just in case, you can always like stop your server and start it again if you want to make sure. And yes, it works correctly. So let's try to do some modification also to this data, because right now we were just doing gets, and we were doing gets until now also with the other APIs like the weather API. But let's try to do some post. So if I want to add some cuts data, the URL will be the same. You may be thinking that you should be adding an ID here because I want to add the new cut data and maybe I want to specify an ID. But in fact, this is not recommended because the user doesn't have to keep track of the IDs. So as a user, I don't know in which ID I am, if I'm on ID 5 or I'm on ID 10. So I don't have to specify, create me a cut with ID 10. Just specify post, that it's a post method / cuts. And then that means that I will be creating a cut. So for creating, I will need some information that should come from the body. And the information that I need is the ID I will create automatically, but I will need the name, the breed, and the favorite food. So let me get this. I will be let new cut request.body. So I'm expecting a body that will be of this format, that will have this, it's an object with these 3 things that I expect to add to this array. And we will see now how to do this on the body of the request. And I will also add an ID to this cut, which could be my array length ++. This is like the easiest way. So let's say I want to just get the next one. It's not. And then I need to push this new cut that I'm creating to my array. So cut data.push this new cut. And then I still need to send some response back that everything was okay. And so I'm going to prepare some response, maybe this status code 201 that is resource created, and some message. I can either have some message like successful, let's say, if I want like okay or success. Or instead, what I can do, it's also that I can send back the ID of the cut created. Or success, cut created with ID, and then I can send here the ID. So the ID would be new cut ID, but in order to use it, I'm going to change this to the backtick format and include the cut ID here. So that the user has some information that the process that they tried to do, was successful. Okay, so let's try to see. So as I was saying, if now I just write here cuts, this route seems that it is exactly the same as this one. The only difference is the method that they use. But if I write cuts here, I'm just getting back the cuts because from the browser, I can only do get. I cannot specify that I want to do a post. So I need to come to the postman to do that. Change the method to post. And then I need to include the body in this case. On the get, I didn't have to have any body, but here I need to have some body created, and I need to add the body in a JSON format. So I think the first time you come here, let me just write it from the start. Dot save. Here, localhost 3000 cats. Okay, so if we do just that, it's a get. Let's change this to post, and we go to body. The first time you come here, it's none, the default. So you need to specify the format, that it's raw and of type JSON. And then in here, you write the information that you want to send to the server. Since I'm creating a new cat, I want to send this information, just without the ID, right? So I'm going to copy this here. But since it is, so I'm removing the ID, I'm not going to set the ID, just the name, milk, breed, I have no idea, and favorite fish, because I have no idea of cat breeds, but also I will use this one. But you will see some red line because this is not yet JSON format. Remember, in JSON format, property names also need to be in between quotes, and especially double quotes. So I will change everything to double quotes. And favorite food fish. And now it's in correct JSON format. So this is the body of my request. And if I hit send, I'm getting, okay, an error, cannot set properties of undefined, blah, blah, blah. There was some error happening. So I got some error as a result. Let's see what has happened. Setting ID. Okay, there was the ID thing. See the cut length. I never remember. Is the length with parentheses? Why I have used it like 1,000 times and I never remember if it is with parentheses. Array length. No. Okay, so it's not with parentheses. Length. I'm not setting ID new cut dot ID. Let me console log to see if we get correctly new cut from the body and try it again. So I sent and let's get here and see what has happened. So the request.body did not give me, okay, I did not get anything from the request body. Request body. Cats. Okay, let me just also the request to see what I'm getting. So the request, it's a huge object, has a lot of information. But I should be getting too long. going to restart it just in case. Request.body cat. And I'm going to refresh this. Send requested body undefined. Okay, I think something here on the postman I need to add. For the headers, it's okay. The body, something that is not added correctly here. Oh, by JSON. Text. Try to send it as a text. No. Okay, I'll check it. I'll check it. It should work like this. I think something here is not setting correctly. No, okay. Okay, I'll check it. I heard it exactly like this on my tests, but no cat ID. Let's say if I just no, but it's undefined. So even if I put something else here, it's not going to be the problem. I think it's on the post. Yes, error. Okay, I'll check it. I'll check it again because I have tried it before and it was working with that. And the request.body is the one that should be giving you the access to this part. So this is the request and this is the body part, and then you write in here. Now we're writing it manually, but imagine that this will be created from a form. So let's say that you have a form and the user adds some information. So let's say that you get the name, the breed, and the favorite food from the form, and you will be creating all this in the front end. So you are not going to be creating this on Postman. You will have some React application as you were doing until now, that when the user clicks the form and create some data, the same we were doing with fetch. So we were doing a fetch to get data. You can also do a fetch to post data. So if now this was our open weather map, fetch, we would get the weather data, we could get the weather data like that, but we could also do fetch and specify that it's post and specify that there is some body information and send it and try to match this route. And so we would match this post information. And so I'm going to also do the delete. Even though this check, I'm going to add some check what not working. And so if I want to do a delete of a concrete cut, again, I need to specify the route, and it should be, for example, a cut with this concrete ID that I want to delete. And so if I want to delete it, that means that first I need to get the ID, same as we did here, request parameters ID to get it. So let me just store it somewhere. This transform it to a number, and then use this ID to find, first check if there is a cut with this ID so that I try to delete it. So I'm going to actually use this same thing that I did here from my cuts array, try to find if there is a cut with this ID. And I'm going to replace this with this ID. I have it stored here. So if not found. So if I did not find this cat, then I'm going to send some error. Send so with the status code 404, send error not found. Else, I'm going to remove it. So if I want to remove it, I can use any method like a splice to remove the cat. So for example, if here, since on the splice I need the index instead of find, I can do like index. So like this, found should be the index. If it's found, it's the index. If it's not found, it's -1. So in fact, then found is bigger than 0. That means no, smaller than 0. So this find index is another method that checks the array, and if it finds something that matches the condition, it returns the index where the item is located on the array. So I need this to have the index, so then I use the splice method to remove this item from my array. So if it's not found, that means that the found will be less than 0. I return some error message, and else if it is found, I use the splice to remove it from my array 1. From the index 1 position, I remove it. And then again, I send back some message that delete it. So for the delete, you choose the methods and you get here and you say delete cat1. Send. This was done correctly. It says delete it. And supposedly now if I do get and I choose all cats, I will only get 1 cat in return because I have deleted the one with ID 1.
So I have a question, sorry. This is all very new to me. And like it all like makes sense kind of, but
Yes.
so you can specify in your delete function what that looks like. So for example, if you wanted to save whatever object you delete, you could do that in that function and then it would still be accessible, like if you wanted to bring it back or do something else with it. Is that right?
Yes, you can.
That you can
Yes,
specify?
yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can do here. You can do whatever you want. Yes, you can
Okay.
save it. And you can return also whatever you want. So this is a bit free. You can even return the deleted item. So send back the whole item, the whole object that this item was deleted, or send any information that you think is relevant. And that's why we use also the API documentation. So same as on the open weather map, it had all the documentation that exactly said how is the URL, but also what the URL returns in case of error or in case of not error for success. And so here, normally we would have we would have to explain what we expect as an input and what we will be giving back also. I know why this is not working. Fix this, sorry. So in order for Node to be able to parse the body, because the body doesn't come when it travels through the protocol, it comes in a kind of unreadable format. In order to be able to translate it to JSON and be able to read it here, we need to add one more line. Use express.json. Let me check. Hopefully this was the error thing missing. So this is kind of a body parser. It's for parsing the body of the request and transforming it to a readable format. And so let me try again the post this with this information, okay, and then send, and yes, okay, now success, cat created with ID 2. Now I have 2 cats with the same ID because since I used the length and I removed one and then I added one. Now, length is not the best way of creating IDs. So if now I get the cuts, no, sorry, the server has been restarted basically. So when I'm doing some change, so like now that I added this line, a change has happened to the file, so the server has been restarted, and so since the server restarted, I reloaded my data again, so all the cut data has been reloaded, even though I deleted one before. So this will happen. This is not persistent. This is not a database that a change that you did stays forever. Every time you reload, it starts from zero. And so next week we will see about databases and how to keep things. So let me see if everything correct. Yes, I think we have more or less everything. Okay, let's check for a moment the assignment that we have. So questions meanwhile, while I try to find what is the exercise for today. This is on APIs, I think, yes. So I'm going to pass this on resources, the assignment, and let's check it. So, API server. So what you will be asked to do, sorry, let me make it a bit smaller, in this exercise is to build a server from scratch using Node and Express. Building a server, it has some steps, like as I was saying, to run npm install, to install Express. And I think it's, in fact, I think here it's already installed. Let me check the package.json. So in the package.json, Express is already here on the dependencies. So if you run npm install, it will install Express. So if you download this and you run npm install, you will have the Express installed. And then you have some data, which is the Pokemon data. And you see this file, it's a very, where did I put this? Here. It's a very big file with a lot of Pokemon information, ID, name, resistance, weakness, weight, height, many things. And then second Pokemon, and it's quite big thing. I don't know how many Pokemons we have. 10? Okay, just 10. So you have, this will be like your fake database that you will have to use for returning or updating information. And so you can use Postman to test the ones that are already created. Here it specifies that the program creates it at 5,000 port. And you should build some queries on your own, like get Pokemon should return all Pokemon, get Pokemon and an ID should return a Pokemon by ID or not found if it doesn't exist. Get Pokemon attacks should return all attacks for a Pokemon by ID. And a post is to create a new Pokemon, delete is to delete a Pokemon, and put, we have not seen this, we can check it now quickly, is to update a Pokemon. So you will need to specify which part of this Pokemon you are trying to update. So it's similar to what we have seen here with cats, but instead of cats, we have Pokemon, and you either get all Pokemons, or you get a Pokemon by ID, or you post to create a Pokemon, etc. To create the Express part, let me check, I think it's created the structure for you, the app.js, yes. So in the app.js, you have most of the thing done already. You import the Express, import the data that you need. This is for starting, for creating this app instance that will be your server. And this is the line that I was missing before for parsing the body when you have a body to parse. So in a get, there is no body, but if there is a post or a put, there will be some body, and you need this to be able to parse it. This is for creating unique IDs by using the data length. Not the best case, but okay, it will work for now. And we don't mind if we have some duplicated IDs for now. And then we have some basic structure already created for you. So some routes already created, but you need to fill the information inside this. So check if Pokemon was found, return it, etc. Okay, questions about the assignment, or it's clear what we have to do?
I was trying to I don't know, maybe to install the nodemon on the example, but also now on the new file, but I keep getting errors in terms of permissions.
Maybe you need to be as an admin.
Okay.
Especially if you try to install it globally. Try it without the -G to install it just for this instance to see, or if not, the sudo to install it as a super user.
Okay.
So if here I clone the assignment, so in here, I should start with install, npm install, and installs the one that are preloaded on the package location. If I want to install nodemon, I can again run install -G nodemon, or without the -G, it will just install it for this program. So now I have it already in my computer, but
Okay.
did it work without the -G?
Yeah.
Or?
Now it seems to not be giving errors. So the G is
Okay.
global, and then okay, that makes sense.
Yes, the -G means global, but for global, then you have access and permissions to the other files. And so in here, then if you open this, you have the structure similar to what we have seen. And here it says app listen to 5,000. So the port that is decided here, you can change it if you like, is the 5,000, and it will console log this. So let me just quickly use the few minutes left to try to do a put as well in our cut. So if I want to modify a cut, put is for modifying. So I should specify an ID of the cut that I want to modify. And so again, first, maybe I need to check if this cut exists. So I can use find index, or I can use the find. So I'm going to copy this part here to have it the same. So first I'm going to get the ID, try to find it with the find index. If I don't find it, I respond with not found. And if I find it, then I need to modify it. And for modifying it, I need to get the new data object from the request.body. So same as I did here, to get the new data from the request.body. And then I update this cut. So for updating it, let's go to cuts, to my array. The index of this item is the one that I have found. So cats.data found. And this will be same as the new cat that I got from the body. So the new information, I will store it to the same place where the other cat was. I will also keep the ID because on the body, there will be no ID. The body is just the pure data, the name, the breed, etc. The ID came there. So I need to also make sure that the ID is not lost. So this ID is the same as the ID that the cat had before. And so I can keep it and update my cat data and then send some message back. Status 200, or if it is 200, I can also just skip the status and send cat and new cat. So I just send back the cat that I have created. Let me try it with the put and the body, and I just add something, or maybe let me just get first so that we see where we are. We have these two, and let's say I want to modify with the put, and I want to modify cat number 2. So I'm just adding the ID here, and I want to change it to this one. So this should be replaced with this. So I get back that the cat that I have created is this one, or that I have modified. And if I do again, I see these two. One was the one that was before, and the one was the one that I modified. It still has ID 2, but I have passed some new information. Okay, I can upload this file also that you can have to check, to have as a guide. And let me know if any questions. I know it's new things, but yeah, we have few new things left. So try to keep this in mind, that it's just next week, and then that's it with the gross part of the theory. Then we will have some extra subjects, more optional, let's say more. But for the backend part, this is the first step, creating a server, creating the APIs, and then the next step is to create a database so that you store this data and you don't have it in a file that reloads every time, and you are able to keep the changes in a more persistent way. Okay, so on Friday we will have a session with Joy, and we'll try to do some more exercises also with fetch and with APIs, so that any doubts to solve and also to get some more ideas. And as always, we're here for tech support and anything. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.